Nobody expected what Bumpy Johnson did after the insult. It was September of 1948, and Harlem was tense the way a room gets tense before a storm. Quiet on the surface, electric underneath. That night, Wells' restaurant on 135th Street was full, music humming from the jukebox, cigarette smoke curling toward the ceiling, the comforting smell of fried food settling into the booths like a familiar blanket. Wells wasn't fancy, but it didn't need to be. In Harlem, it was neutral ground. You could hate a man outside. You could plot against him on the street. But inside those walls, you kept the peace. Bumpy's peace. Because Harlem wasn't just a neighborhood then. It was a kingdom. And Bumpy Johnson was its king. He sat in his usual corner booth, positioned where he could see both doors and the kitchen without turning his head. His movements were calm and deliberate, cutting his steak with the same precision he used in everything. Across from him sat his wife, elegant and composed, the kind of woman who didn't raise her voice because she didn't have to. At 8:47 p.m., the door opened. First came the man sent to deliver a message, Sal the Butcher Bonanno, a towering figure in a tailored suit. The nickname wasn't for show. Stories followed him the way shadows follow a man at night, rumors of what happened to anyone who stole from his family's card games, whispers of bodies found in pieces across different boroughs. Behind him came 6 armed men. They didn't bother hiding the bulges under their jackets. They wanted everyone to notice. The restaurant fell silent in a way that wasn't polite. It was survival. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the music seemed smaller. Sal walked straight to Bumpy's table as if the room already belonged to him. "Bumpy Johnson," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We need to talk." Bumpy didn't look up. He kept cutting his steak, slow and steady, the knife scraping softly against the plate. "I'm eating," he replied, voice low, controlled. Sal let out a small laugh, the kind meant to humiliate. "Nice place," he said, looking around like he was inspecting property. "Real quaint. But here's the truth. My Uncle Joe has decided it's time Harlem got with the program." Bumpy still didn't look up. "The numbers operation," Sal continued, "is Italian business now. Always should have been. You're going to step aside and hand it over. We'll give you 10% just for your trouble. Keep your restaurant, keep playing the big man for your people. Just understand where the real money belongs." Every eye in the room stayed on Bumpy. He set his knife down carefully, dabbed his mouth with his napkin, and finally looked up at Sal. His expression wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. It was calm. Too calm. "That's a generous offer," Bumpy said evenly, "but I'm going to decline." Sal's smile faded. "You're making a mistake." "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life," Bumpy replied. "This isn't one of them." That's when Sal crossed the line. He leaned forward and spat out a racist epithet, the kind of word that wasn't just an insult, but a declaration. "You don't belong at this table." The sound that followed wasn't a shout or a gunshot. It was smaller, sharper. Bumpy's wife setting her fork down on her plate. Clink. And that sound landed in the room like a warning bell. The restaurant didn't just go quiet. It turned still, like everyone was waiting for the world to end. Bumpy's face didn't change. No flinch, no fury. But the people who knew him, the ones who understood what he was capable of, felt something colder than fear. Because a man who stays calm when he has every reason to explode is not a man you want to test. Bumpy reached into his vest pocket. Sal's 6 men tensed instantly, hands drifting toward their weapons. But Bumpy didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out a straight razor, old, polished, familiar, the kind of blade that carried history. He placed it gently on the table beside his steak knife. "You brought 6 men," Bumpy said softly. 6 guns into my restaurant, and you think that makes you dangerous?" Sal tried to smirk. "I think it makes me smart." Bumpy's eyes didn't move. "No," he said, "it makes you ignorant." Then he stood, slowly. No rush, no panic. He folded his napkin with the same careful precision he used to cut his food and placed it on the table as if he had all the time in the world. The armed men raised their hands higher now, ready. Bumpy didn't even glance at them. "You see these people?" he said, gesturing lightly around the room. Sal looked, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered in his face. You think they're just customers? Bumpy continued. Strangers eating dinner? He nodded toward the man near the door. That man. I paid his daughter's hospital bills when she got sick. He nodded toward a woman in a red dress. That woman. I made sure her husband never laid a hand on her again. He tilted his chin toward the back. That kid washing dishes. I kept him out of jail when the cops tried to pin something on him. Bumpy took one small step closer. Every person in this room owes me something, he said. Not because I demanded it, because I earned it. He let the words hang long enough to sink into Sal's bones. You brought 6 guns into my house, Bumpy said, but I've got 40 soldiers. Sal's eyes moved again, scanning the faces around him. They weren't pleading. They weren't afraid. They were waiting. Bumpy lowered his voice, almost gentle now. So here's your choice. You apologize to my wife for that word you used in her presence. Then you walk out of here and tell your Uncle Harlem is not for sale. He reached down, picked up the razor, and opened it slowly. The blade caught the light. Or, he added, you learn why they call this Bumpy's kingdom. Sal had hurt men, killed men, broken businesses, and ruined lives. He wasn't new to violence. But this wasn't about violence. This was about certainty. In that room, Sal realized something too late. He wasn't surrounded by witnesses. He was surrounded by loyalty, the kind you can't buy and the kind you can't scare. Bumpy smiled then, not friendly, not warm, the kind of smile a man gives you when he already knows the ending and you don't. And then he said 6 words, quietly, clearly, like a sentence already written. Your uncle will bury you tomorrow. The air changed. Sal's face went pale. What? You heard me, Bumpy replied. You walked in here, disrespected me, disrespected my wife, disrespected my people, and you think you're walking out of Harlem untouched? Sal's men raised their guns fully now. All 6 pointed at Bumpy. Bumpy didn't blink. You can shoot me, he said calmly. Maybe you even kill me. He leaned in slightly, just enough to make the threat feel personal. But the moment you pull those triggers, the people in this room tear you apart. And even if you make it out that door, you think you're leaving Harlem alive? His voice stayed steady. This is my city. Every block, every corner, every alley. Then, softer. You're already dead, you just don't know it yet. Time slowed. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Sal's gun lowered, first an inch, then fully. His crew looked at him like he'd lost his mind. But Sal wasn't looking at them. He was looking at Bumpy's wife. His voice dropped to almost nothing. Mrs. Johnson, I apologize. She didn't respond. She simply stared at him, cold, unshaken, unmoved. Sal backed away, step by step, like a man leaving the edge of a cliff. His crew followed, weapons still visible but no longer raised. At the door, Sal turned back one last time. This isn't over, Bumpy. Bumpy sat down again, picked up his fork, and cut another piece of steak as if nothing had happened. Yes, it is, he said without looking up. You just don't know it yet. Sal and his men left Harlem that night, and they didn't come back. Days later, the 5 families held an emergency meeting in Manhattan. Some wanted blood. Some wanted a war. But the smarter ones understood the truth. Harlem didn't belong to outsiders, not because of money, but because of loyalty. You could kill a man, sure, but you couldn't kill an entire community willing to stand behind him. From then on, the Italians stopped trying to take Harlem by force. They negotiated. They made deals. They showed respect. Because that night in Wells' restaurant taught them something they'd forgotten. Power isn't only guns or money. Power is the love of people who don't have to love you, yet choose to anyway. And after that night, nobody ever came into Bumpy Johnson's restaurant and disrespected him again. Not when he had a razor on the table, not when he never even had to use it.